move closer to both China and Pakistan. So how did things come to such a pass where someone who has ruled uninterrupted for the better part of the last 15 years, 4 terms as Prime Minister, had to flee her country in rather inglorious circumstances? And most importantly, what happens now, both domestically in Bangladesh and also its international ramifications? For India, Sheikh Hasina represented its best political option in Bangladesh. She was the biggest friend of India in Bangladesh. Now with her gone, how does India guard against the re-emergence of the Bangladesh Nationalist Party and also possibly hardline Islamist elements who may be inimical to India's interests? How should India deal with the political tsunami that has just happened in neighboring Bangladesh?
After weeks of growing unrest and deadly clashes, the people of Bangladesh have spoken and the Sheikh Hasina era has come to an end. It also draws to a close a tumultuous month for Bangladesh in which nearly 300 people were killed. Sheikh Hasina was reportedly given 45 minutes to step down. She wanted to address the nation, but her security detail vetoed the proposal. Army Chief General Wakar-uz-Zaman addressed the nation and said the military will form an interim government.
দেশে একটা ক্রান্তিকাল চলছে। আমি সমস্ত রাজনৈতিক দলের নেতৃবৃন্দকে এখানে আমন্ত্রণ করেছিলাম। ওনারা এখানে এসেছেন। আমরা একটা সুন্দর আলোচনা করেছি। সেখানে আমরা সিদ্ধান্ত নিয়েছি যে একটা ইন্টারিম গভর্নমেন্ট আমরা ফর্ম করব।
After resigning, Sheikh Hasina fled the country in a military chopper along with her sister. Her destination of choice was India. Hasina had maintained close ties with India since her first election in 1996. She cracked down on anti-India militant groups in Bangladesh, earning goodwill in Delhi. As news trickled in of Hasina's resignation and departure, celebrations erupted in Bangladesh. Crowds ran towards her official residence in Dhaka, raising slogans against her as they celebrated. Soldiers and police in armoured vehicles had barricaded all the routes, but vast crowds flooded the streets, tearing down the barriers. These same crowds then stormed into Ganabhavan, which is the Premier's home. Many of them ended up ransacking the house, looting chairs and utensils. But perhaps no better image summed up Bangladesh's anger towards Sheikh Hasina than this sight of protesters climbing a tall statue of her father and Bangladesh's independence leader and former Prime Minister Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. Some of the protesters defaced the statue as a large crowd gathered under it and cheered when fragments of it fell on the ground. Why did it come to this in the first place? Protesters were demanding Hasina's resignation and are seeking justice for nearly 300 people who have been killed in deadly protests since July. Students had been up in arms over a controversial quota system which reserved up to 30% of government jobs for family members of veterans from Bangladesh's 1971 war of independence against Pakistan. Protesters argued that this system is discriminatory and favours supporters of Prime Minister Hasina's Awami League party. They advocated for a merit-based system to replace the existing quota. But Hasina accused the demonstrators of sabotage and cut off the internet in a bid to quell the unrest. She said the protesters were no longer students, but they were criminals and should be handled with iron hands. As student protesters continued to clash with security officials, Bangladesh's Supreme Court stepped in to roll back the decision. But by then, the movement had evolved into a broader anti-government uprising demanding Hasina's resignation. Sheikh Hasina ruled over Bangladesh for 15 years. She was recently elected for a record 4th consecutive term and her 5th overall. After her father's assassination in 1975, Hasina spent 6 years in exile in India and was elected as the leader of the Awami League. She was first elected Prime Minister in the 1996 general election. Hasina was voted out of office in the 2001 elections, but returned to power with a thumping victory in the 2008 polls. After coming back to power, she cracked down on opposition leaders, but also provided stability to the once military-ruled Bangladesh. But Bangladesh's Iron Lady ended her long and eventful tenure on a whimper.
All right, we're just getting some more details. There's been a Cabinet Committee on Security meeting that's happening at 7 Lok Kalyan Marg, the Prime Minister's residence. The situation in Bangladesh in the aftermath of Sheikh Hasina being ousted from power has been discussed. The Prime Minister chaired the meeting. Amongst those who attended the meeting are Home Minister Amit Shah, Defence Minister Rajnath Singh, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar, and the National Security Advisor Ajit Doval, who met with Sheikh Hasina at the Hindon Air Base, and there was a brief exchange of words between them. The National Security Advisor has briefed the Cabinet Committee on Security as to what was the discussion and what now is expected to happen. Remember, Prime Minister of Bangladesh, former Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina, landed at the Hindon Air Base in Ghaziabad. She's reportedly at an undisclosed location here in the national capital, and then subsequently she is expected to fly out to London, where she has sought refuge, or where she has sought some form of political refuge. Let me now open this up, because this has huge ramifications, not just domestically in Bangladesh, but also for the wider region. India, of course, is paying close attention to the developments there. India, on the one hand, has to ensure that Sheikh Hasina, a longtime friend and ally of India, has to be protected, and whatever is required to ensure that she's taken care of is done on the one hand, and yet at the same time ensure that its interests are also protected in whatever new regime comes to power in Dhaka. Remember, there are both domestic concerns with potentially the return of some form of Islamization of politics in Bangladesh, and there are international concerns. There is now a power vacuum into which powers like China, Pakistan, even Russia to a great extent might want to step in. Let's now open this up to our panelists and discuss threadbare what the ramifications of today's seismic events in Bangladesh and outside of it. Lieutenant General retired Satish Dua is former GOC of the 15 Corps. Ambassador Anil Trigoniat, former diplomat, is joining us. Madhav Nalapat, geopolitical expert. Tawfiq Imroz Khalidi is editor-in-chief of bdnews24.com from Bangladesh. He's joining us live from Dhaka. And Haroon Habib is a senior Bangladeshi journalist, also joining us live from Dhaka. Let me start with our Bangladeshi friends tonight on the broadcast. Mr. Tawfiq Imroz Khalidi, first things first, please, for the benefit of our viewers here in India and around the world, how did things come to today's pass where a ruler who's been ruling the country for the last 15 years, longest serving woman head of government anywhere in the world, longer tenures than Indira Gandhi and Margaret Thatcher, how was she ousted from power so dramatically, and that too in the space of the last 24 hours or so?
When he won an election in December 2008, it was a huge victory. He truly won the election, and he was very popular. Then, actually, he squandered it very quickly. The following three elections, I'm trying to be very brief, the following three elections were not elections at all. As your reporter was saying, the people have spoken in a different way. The reason why the people have spoken in the way they have today, or in the last few days, is because they were forced to keep silent during those elections. And he took things for granted. He became so arrogant, He wouldn't take it. She wouldn't take advice from anyone, And she surrounded herself with people who would just say things that she would like to hear. And this sycophancy. So this is the main problem. This was her main problem. She would listen to certain people, and would listen to people she didn't like. And she kind of thinks. Started taking things for granted. Especially after the last elections, his choice of people, the kind of people she pointed certain people to certain places, certain positions. They are not right kind of people. They're not even her supporters. And then she kind of promoted corruption. She was not probably personally not corrupt. There is no evidence that she was corrupt personally, but she opted for people who were corrupt. She promoted and patronized and protected corrupt people who actually surrounded her. And these people, through these people, she antagonized a large section of people, people in business, people in other segments of the society, and she kind of went too far in trying to promote, her family. Yes, Bangabandhu, she led Bangladesh to liberation. Everything's fine, but I think she allowed people to go too far in trying to, do things in her. There are so many universities in Bangladesh set up. There are other things she did. She probably didn't like.
I do want to ask Mr. Harun Habib as well, because in her time as Prime Minister from 2009 till yesterday, Sheikh Hasina also oversaw a massive economic transformation of Bangladesh. When she assumed power in 2008 for her second term, Bangladesh was a $70 billion economy. Today, it's a $450 billion economy. It is at the forefront of textile exports and other kinds of exports. Why is it that the rapid economic transformation and lifting millions out of poverty has not guaranteed her the kind of political sort of hold on power? Or were people just sick and tired of just having one person in power for the last 15 years?
Well, if we talk about economic development, and it was enormous, undoubtedly, under Sheikh Hasina. But the thing is this, that the corruption has taken deep into the society. And moreover, the current hesitation was definitely an issue came out from quota reform. But government has agreed to all the demands of the students. But the way some of the ministers and some of the high-ups of the government behaved, and the way a major killing took place, which was never we have seen before. Hundreds of people were killed. So it was not liked by the people. On the other hand, people are really unhappy because concurrently they are 3 times in a row in power. So their anti-incumbency was definitely there. But, very recently, the prices of essentials has gone up to unlimited level. Therefore, the hesitation was there. And what I have seen, that the student hesitation was definitely a quota issue thing,
Yeah.
But it was later on turned into one-point movement, and the thing is that people have supported, and there's a popular afsas, you can say, whatever is going to have in the near future, that will be a different story.
Okay.
But people has rejected this government because of many things. One thing is the student issue. Another thing is the high-handedness of the government. And other thing, the way they have handled the young students.
Okay. So let me ask General Dua, what may be the diplomatic and international fallout of this? Because clearly, as far as India is concerned, we've had long-standing ties with Sheikh Hasina and with the Awami League. India has always felt that she was India's best bet to protect India's interests as far as the neighborhood is concerned. But now, what may likely happen, both domestically and internationally? Because China has for long been eyeing the Chittagong port. They want to establish that as part of their One Belt, One Road initiative. We know that with Pakistan, for example, under the Awami League governance, under Sheikh Hasina, relations between Dhaka and Islamabad had plummeted. In fact, I think they had even sent back each other's high commissioners or very senior diplomats. Do you see Pakistan and China now playing a more active role, which may possibly be inimical to India's interests in Bangladesh?
Zaka, we've seen during these protests that Jamaat-e-Islami cadres have actually been a very significant part of these protests. We've also seen, and like you also pointed out, during Sheikh Hasina's time, ISI, the footprint of ISI was marginalized in Bangladesh. But with this happening, as it is, their army chief is on record to say that he's trying to make an interim government in which involves all parties, other than of course other than Awami League, but involve all parties, and of which Jamaat Islami is a part. Now, when Jamaat Islami will gain more strength, that is for sure. When that happens, as far as Pakistan is concerned, this will get the ISI back in. This will get their vested interest back in. So I mean, they will enter the door. As far as so there goes, Pakistan influence is likely to increase, which is a cause of concern for India. As far as China is concerned, we already know their interest, and whatever is the next dispensation, since Sheikh Hasina's dispensation was very pro-India, whatever becomes the next dispensation, that is bound to have more Chinese influence in my view. So combination of Pakistan and Chinese influence increasing in the dispensation that we are yet to see, then whatever happens, that is something that India will have to watch with concern. And I'm sure we will have to decide as to what steps we take to counter that.
Okay. Ambassador Trigunyat is also joining us. There was also a feeling that there was very little love lost between the US government and Sheikh Hasina. I think virtually every week or every other week, the State Department was putting out a statement against her, saying that, elections are not free and fair, and about the jailing of political opponents, civil society members, journalists, bloggers, etc. Do you feel that the US also pushed her to this extent? Now that she is out of the equation, there, she's fled the country. She's now in India. Whatever political dispensation comes in her place next in Dhaka will be far more amenable to China and to Pakistan. And this is perhaps because the US simply kept pushing these buttons without realizing how far this could push the political establishment away from America and also from India.
Yes, Zaka, you are quite right. In fact, I remember about 3 years ago, 2 years ago, twice I've been to Bangladesh for various conferences, and I have seen it was before the elections, and we have been seeing that United States has been discounting the democratic credentials of Sheikh Hasina government all through various means. Through the embassy was also issuing statements like that on repeatedly. And so this was very much obvious that they did not want. And you remember that when there was a democracy summit, in that was Bangladesh was not invited, whereas they invited Pakistan. So I don't know what kind of calculations they have, because definitely, as General Dua also said, that influence of China or Pakistan may increase. But I'm not too worried about it personally, because you look at 3 instances in the recent past. Sri Lanka, where the Chinese loans and everything brought the country that pass, it was India which bailed them out. You look at Afghanistan, what happened there? It was courtesy United States. Again, they are looking at India because India's developmental assistance has been very much appreciated in the country. They're asking Indians to come and complete the projects and do more. Look at Maldives, where India Out campaign started off. The parliament also came of the same Muizu government, but then Muizu immediately came to India and has been wanting India to do more something. So I think that this kind of a seesaw, this kind of power balancing, as far as India and China are concerned, will continue to go on in all our neighborhoods. And that we'll have to deal with it. So leaders come, leaders go. Of course, if you have a more positive leader, and we have a relationship with Bangladesh from its very birth, and with the Awami League that led to that revolution and successful emergence of Bangladesh. So I think the people of Bangladesh eventually do understand and will understand, and whichever government is in power will have to look at it. What is the interest of Bangladesh in the first place? So I think that we'll have to recalibrate little bit here and there. But what we are doing, the way we are doing within Bangladesh or in our whole of neighborhood, in accordance with our neighborhood first policy, I don't see a major change in that.
Okay, Professor Madhav Nalapat, the other big concern for India, and we'll have to see how this plays out in the next few months, is the potential for a large exodus of refugees, people fleeing Bangladesh and entering into either Bengal or other northeastern states of the country. Already, a couple of northeast chief ministers have said that they would want some kind of stricter monitoring of the movement of people, the influx of refugees from Bangladesh. Of course, Sheikh Hasina initially, when she took in a large number of Rohingyas, I think about 6 million or so, she was toasted. And then subsequently, when she realized that this is too much for the infrastructure, the public infrastructure of Bangladesh to handle, then suddenly she became a villain of the peace. So how do you see this playing out? Because India has very, very serious concerns about the ability to handle such a large influx of refugees if they were to come from Bangladesh.
Well, Zaka, first of all, I'd like to point out that whenever you have this kind of a mass uprising, and it was led by the students initially, and I think Sheikh Hasina acted a little unwisely in shooting those demonstrators, because that really mobilized the student community, their parents and youth against her. And that's a very hard force to handle. Now, to that, what the problem is, these mass movements, fringe elements quickly assume leadership in the chaos, and then they take control. We saw that happen in Egypt, where, Egypt is broadly a very moderate country, but Muhammad Morsi took charge. So we have seen that in other parts of the world as well, where extremists take charge as a result of public unrest. So I'd like to warn, that is a problem that we have to face. Now, as far as the Bangladesh is concerned, the fact is, Zaka, it's very troubling when they attack the statue of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman.
Yeah.
Mujibur Rahman is in a sense like Mahatma Gandhi in Bangladesh. He got Bangladeshi independence together with the Mukti Bahini and, of course, the Indian Army. Now, that shows their mindset, which means, frankly, that the fringe element, which, as you correctly said, is close to China, is close to Pakistan, has assumed leadership, which is troubling. I'd just like to add, Zaka, that look, in 1971, when Bangladesh was liberated by the Mukti Bahini and the Indian Army, China and Russia were at odds with each other. Today, I'm sorry to say, somewhat clumsy American diplomacy on Ukraine has ensured that Russia and China are in lockstep on this matter, which I think is a problem for the United States. It's certainly a problem for the rest of the world. But having said that, I'd like to point out this will be a short-term gain. For a simple reason, you saw in Afghanistan, Pakistan celebrated the return of the Taliban. At that point in time, some of us had pointed out that the overwhelming majority of members of the Taliban are young, and they're what I called at that point in time, 2022, free Taliban. They were not linked to either China or to Pakistan. And frankly, they had contempt for those who were linked to China and Pakistan. So now you're seeing a lot of activity play out, and Pakistan is really feeling the cost of that. So I'd like to say it's a short-term thing. India is a much more reliable friend. There's no question about it. But I want to add just one more point. NSA Doval met her to brief her on the security situation and to get a briefing on the security situation. He did not receive her. He met her to get a briefing and to give a briefing. So I think that point has to be stressed.
Okay.
Because
just give me one moment, Professor Nalapat. I'm now joined by a very special guest, one of the most respected voices of Bangladesh in the last many years. He's now been living in Paris. He, of course, had his own troubles with the outgoing dispensation of Sheikh Hasina. Thank you very much, Muhammad Yunus, Nobel laureate.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. First things first, how would you describe the pretty significant and some would say historic events that have played out in Bangladesh today within a matter of hours? A long-standing ruler, a long-standing prime minister has been ousted. She's now fled to India, and we're given to understand that she's possibly en route to London.
Yeah, it's a celebration now all over Bangladesh that she has left. Now they're free from her. This was something that they're hoping someday will happen. The students made it happen, but the students' idea was not to get her out. They were simply demonstrating for a simple reason, for quota arrangements that we had. They didn't like it. They wanted to change it. They were just amending the quota. That little demonstration became uglier and uglier because government wanted to shoot at them. They did shoot them, they killed them, continued with them. And then they brought paramilitary. Still, students become larger and larger in number. And then they brought the army. It becomes still larger, and killing continued to grow. Yesterday, there were 97 young people who were killed yesterday alone. So you can see that what simple thing made a very complicated thing. And now she had to leave the country because of the things that she have done over years. And this is the failure of democracy. She didn't want democracy to be in Bangladesh. She had fake elections, never had a real election. And these young people who were 1/3 of the country, 2/3 of the whole population of the country, never voted in their life. They never had a chance to go and vote. They didn't know how its democratic system works. So this is something accumulated. All the pent-up anger burst into volcanic eruption. That's what just happened today.
So the immediate trigger, of course,
like a celebration of liberation, like we had in the 16th of December in 1971. The similar celebration is going on all over the country. This is a new liberation that they feel they have.
So the immediate trigger, of course, was, like you said, was about this quota system, which, of course, the Supreme Court of Bangladesh, whittled it down. They reduced it down to just about 5%, I believe. You think the manner in which the Hasina government responded to these students, the shooting, the firing, the almost repression of these protests, that is what led to her ouster from power, not so much the quota itself, because after the Supreme Court's decision, I believe the protests had subsided for a bit.
It started again because of the utterances made, and the killing continued. Students came back again with their parents, joined them, neighbors joined them. It became an ocean of people gradually all over the country. It's not just located in. This is not a Dhaka demonstration. This is a countrywide demonstration. Every single person is participating in that because they want to get rid of Hasina.
What do you think happens next? The army has said that they are going to put in place an interim government. Do you see elections in the near future? What may those throw up? Will the main opposition party, the BNP, come back to power? How do you see this playing out politically?
One of the things I've been emphasizing right from the beginning, the cure for all this political trouble is to have a fair election, because people have to express themselves in a political way, what they want that they never had in their young people's life. So this will be an occasion, have an election, have a caretaker government, and caretaker government will be responsible for election. And caretaker government was introduced with the insistence of Awami League, and Awami League made it part of the constitution. As soon as Hasina came to power, she scrapped it completely. So that thing gone. I said that was the cure for Bangladesh, have a caretaker government so that they can have a fair and transparent election. So the election is in the control of Hasina. So Hasina made it her own game to re-elect herself without any vote. So this is the core problem of Bangladesh. And the rest of it is just an outcome of what happened, corruptions and everything else, and killing people, disappearing people, and all the thing that you hear in the newspapers or read in the newspaper.
Would you want to go back to your country in some form, and would you want to participate, if you're asked to, in the political process? I know you've contested elections in the past as well, but would you be open to that idea?
I didn't contest any election in the past, so I'm not a politician. So I don't run in the election. I do my own work, and I stay away from politics. In 2007, when another army takeover took place at that time, they invited me to become the head of the government.
Yeah.
I apologized to them. This is not my job. You find somebody else. I'm not the kind of person to get involved with the politics. So I always stayed away from politics. This is how I'm trying to keep myself away from it.
So you wouldn't want to head some kind of an interim arrangement if you were asked to by the current.
I don't know. I'm telling everybody that no, I cannot. The circumstances, I don't know, because I'm away from Bangladesh right now. So when I go back, I have to see what's happening.
Would you like to go back?
Of course, I came for Olympic. I'm here in the Olympic and I'm one of the designer of this Olympic, what we call social business Olympic. So things that we have done to benefit the people rather than just corporates and so on. So that I became integrated part of this whole designing of the Olympic. So they invited me to be there to see how it's working, others who are trying to copy that, how to improve that, like Milano Cortina Winter Olympic is coming up 2026. They are in a body here. They have requested us to help them to design their social business Winter Olympics. So that's what brought me here. I'm here right now. And they even have a street named after me in Paris because of the thing that I have done for France and Paris and so on. So this is what kept me here. So once I'll go back to Bangladesh. I came for this reason and I'll go back.
You have expressed some degree of disappointment, let's say, about India not playing a proactive enough role, especially when a lot of people were complaining about how Hasina was getting too autocratic in her ways.
I was very disappointed.
Do you feel vindicated now?
No, India didn't do anything for her to get her out. It's a question of they still supported her. Now she's out. Finally, and that made a big damage to our relationship with Bangladesh, because Bangladesh didn't see it very kindly that India has been totally supportive of her, who is a totalitarian government, never having an election in the entire period. And India is the first one to come and greet and give all the congratulations for success in the election, which was a fake election. They know it very well. There's part of it. So that soured the relationship between the people of Bangladesh and India. I said, India should be our best friend. That's what we are supposed to be, because we work together so many ways and so many things to learn from each other. So that's what our real relationship is. And instead of with wrong policy of India, that soured the whole relationship. You name India anywhere in Bangladesh, they will respond very negatively. So this should be changed completely. Your foreign policy has to change. So we're equal. We don't support one particular person or particular party, and try to keep, even as a autocrat, is a totalitarian person, and then have the outcome of something like that. We have to review the whole thing.
There are concerns here in India with the establishment that now with Sheikh Hasina gone, there could be the return to either the BNP or possibly even some Islamist parties. How would you address those concerns?
It's a democracy. In democracy, anybody come in. Trump is getting elected. Everybody hates it. I hate the way he does. Doesn't mean that he cannot run the election. So this is democracy. People, whether it's Jamaat or BNP or anybody, you have to accept democracy. There's no escape from that. You have to get rid of all those ideas that it's Jamaat. Either you do it in India like that, this is Jamaat, you cannot do that, or in Bangladesh or anywhere else. Democracy is democracy. Everybody has a right to vote, right to express their opinion, as long as they obey the rules of the law of the land. That's all. If they violate, they get punished. But until then, they're as good as anybody else. They are citizens of the country. They are voters. They are the owners of the country. So they have to have freedom for them. Any other kind of marking them in some way would be very anti-democratic.
We know that Sheikh Hasina is in India right now. She's in an undisclosed location. Reportedly, some negotiations are going on for her to fly to London. She wants to seek some kind of political refuge in London. How may India's role so far in extricating her from Bangladesh, and now she's in a safe house here in India, and possibly she's en route to London, how may this be viewed by ordinary people in Bangladesh?
It's a continuation of the same view that always people felt India is against us, against Bangladeshi people. So they continued that policy, taking care of Hasina, which is hated by Bangladeshi people.
I do want to know your thoughts. I mean, personally too, I think she slapped about 100+ cases against you, corruption charges, labor law violations, so on and so forth. And you said many of this is simply politically motivated. How does today sort of stand in contrast to all that you've had to go through because of your political opposition to Sheikh Hasina?
I guess she made me more popular because everybody is supporting me. The more she hits me, the people come towards me. So in the process, she hurt herself. I don't know what happened now with the new government coming in, how they will treat it. That's up to them. But definitely these are fake cases with no basis of on the raw law. Clooney Foundation already said repeatedly how empty these cases are, how useless these cases are. Amnesty International said the same thing, and UN rapporteur said this is weaponization of legal system.
Dr. Yunus, how do you speak to concerns that, now with Sheikh Hasina gone, the Chinese and maybe even Pakistan will play a greater role, particularly in the strategic affairs and the outward sort of outlook of Bangladesh?
It's possible they will come back because India didn't want them to do, and Hasina would not like to do. It will be the best interest of Bangladesh. Whoever comes with a friendly way, they will treat them as equals.
Do you see it possible that there could be another leadership emerge from within the Awami League itself?
Possible. Why not? It's a democracy. It's a free democracy. That's the beauty of democracy. They can always come back. They would always redesign their policies, images, and say, apologize to people. We did wrong things. Please, this is our thing. They are wrong leaders. We are not with them anymore. Those kind of things. There's a usual political turnaround kind of thing, so that people gradually keep accepting it.
But these pictures that I'm sure you've also seen today of people standing on top of Mujibur Rahman's statue and trying to vandalize it, doesn't that concern you?
No, this is the result of what Hasina has done. Anger towards everything that she has done. To herself, to her family, everything. So that anger is being expressed. There's nothing wrong with that. They felt so much pent-up emotions behind it. They're expressing their emotions.
And last few questions as I wind down this interview. As far as the BNP is concerned, and I know you're not a political person, but there is also a view that it's extremely weak politically. Their leader, Ms. Zia, has been keeping very unwell. I think her elder son, who's her political heir, has been in exile in London. Do you see the BNP at all in a political position to even if there were to be an election, to be able to win that election?
No idea. I have no idea because I don't know BNP very much. I don't know other parties also because I don't interact with them. So it's a question of how they present themselves to the new Bangladesh. The Bangladesh now emerging, whether they'll be attractive in their views, in their actions, and so on. By the time elections held, what is the message they bring out? Just like any other elections, any other democratic process. So they have to present themselves and explain what they have done, what they didn't do in the past, and explain what is in their future plan.
How do you speak to concerns that the army might continue to be in power even beyond an interim arrangement?
It's possible, and army rule is always bad, always destroys whatever you got. It's never welcome to anybody. So we will be very vocal if the army continues.
And that you would think that if that were to happen, that would not be acceptable to a large majority of Bangladeshi people.
Absolutely not. People don't like military rule.
Okay. And I come back. All right. I come back to the point that I asked you a little while earlier, just to reinforce it. You would want to go back, and if given the opportunity, and you're not close to the idea, if given the opportunity to take part in some form in this interim government arrangement, you wouldn't be closed to that idea. You're willing to think about it with an open mind. if you're asked?
Yes, this is something people keep asking me because I keep repeating my previous answer. They said country is in crisis. You don't want to help the country in crisis, so they will put me in shame for not doing the right thing to do help with the people to overcome. So I have to listen to them. What is their argument? Can I do it in any other role? Can I function in any other role, help the people, and so on? So I have to wait.
All right, Muhammad Yunus, thank you very much for speaking with us here
Thank
on
you.
CNN News 18.
Thank you.
And thank you for your time, your thoughts, your perspective into what has been pretty significant events that have happened in back home in your country with the exit of a long-time Prime Minister, in fact, the longest-serving woman Prime Minister of any government, longer serving than even Indira Gandhi and Margaret Thatcher, and of course the longest serving Prime Minister of Bangladesh. Of course, like I've been saying and we've been discussing for a number of hours now since these dramatic pictures came from earlier this afternoon, this is going to have cataclysmic impacts both domestically in Bangladesh and also from a foreign policy realm, whether it is revival of China and Pakistan's interests in Bangladesh, whether it is Bangladesh moving away from the American axis more towards China, Pakistan, Russia axis, and of course what this may mean for India and its own interests in the South Asian region. Remember, there are concerns. Of course, there is always the inimical relationship with Pakistan. Recently, we've had a change of government in Nepal. Sri Lanka is going to elections in the next few months. One never knows how it will play out there. I think one of the guests earlier pointed out about how the Maldives has not been particularly welcoming, although they've had to change in the last month or so. But let me go back to our guests, and I want to put a round of questions to all our panelists from what you've heard from Dr. Yunus's interview just now. Harun Habib, let me start with Mr. Khalidi, Tawfiq Imroz Khalidi. So let's take this story forward. Where do you think Sheikh Hasina will eventually end up living? We know she's in India right now. There are negotiations going on for her to seek exile or seek some kind of political refuge in London. Where do you see her ending up? And more importantly, how do you see people in Bangladesh viewing the fact that she left from Dhaka, came to India, is now in an undisclosed location in India, and India is perhaps negotiating with whichever country it is that she wants to eventually move to?
Well, she has lived in India before. She's used to living in India. She likes India, loves being in India. She was the first head of government after the latest elections to visit India on a bilateral plane. And then, of course, but she also likes to travel to and be in London, because that's where her only sibling now has lived for the last 40 years or so, or more than 40 years. So London is also a very familiar place to her. And there is a huge base of number of supporters living in London. She gets greeted by hundreds of thousands of people, thousands of people at the airport and at other places. So she feels comfortable, and she's already, as we said, has already sought refuge in UK. So UK is a destination for her at the moment, at least. And the interesting part is, just not only, it's not even a week that she said, then I'm the daughter of Sheikh Mujib, and I will not run away.
Okay.
I will not leave this country. She had to leave this country. Some unconfirmed sources, I have to confirm, but some sources told me that her sister convinced her to leave the country because the situation really got really, really, really bad. I mean, to the point that in just a matter of hours, they could organize people from all over the country, they come to Dhaka because it was supposed to be tomorrow. They did it today, and in just a matter of hours. The government couldn't do it. So, and I think when it comes to her personal physical safety, her sister did the right thing.
Harun Habib, just in terms of what this means, whatever new dispensation comes into power in Dhaka, the agreements that have been signed between India and Bangladesh during Hasina's term, whether it's the land boundary agreement, whether it's the Teesta water sharing agreements, are these insulated, or do you see a new government possibly even trying to reopen them?
It is too early to say about this because government has not formed yet. The army chief and the others, after giving the address to the nation, they are in the president house discussing things, issues with the president. But the agreements between Bangladesh and India is not agreement between India and Sheikh Hasina. It is the two countries agreement.
Yeah.
So it is very difficult to say how things will move in the near future. But I still say one thing, one particular thing has really alarmed me, that the destruction of the statue of Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, who is the founder of Bangladesh. So I don't think what will happen in the near future. But one thing is that the Bangladesh and people are definitely happy, as everybody said. I mean, even today at 9 or 10 or p.m. at night, hundreds of thousands of people are rejoicing in the streets of Dhaka, the fall of Sheikh Hasina. But that doesn't mean that the father of the nation who founded this country, her images will be disputed like this. So this is somebody's concern.
Okay. Let me ask General Dua, and I'll get a closing comment from Ambassador Trigunit as well. General Dua, the big concern for India, the security concern, is the influx of refugees, some estimates saying up to 1 crore refugees. This will, of course, have huge implications for India's northeastern states. And the other concern, of course, is about terrorism and insurgency. When the BNP was in power, this was a long-standing complaint that Bangladesh was becoming a sanctuary for many of the militant groups that were operating in the northeast, with sanctuary in Bangladesh. How real are those fears?
Taking the second one first, I think this is a real concern because earlier the terrorist groups used to have their bases in Bangladesh, and they used to strike at will in the northeastern states. Today, Manipur is on the boil. I know Manipur doesn't have a border with Bangladesh, but Manipur is on the boil. Similarly, terrorist groups could foment trouble in the other northeastern states, as it was a couple of decades ago. Secondly, about the migration. It may be a little early to put a number to it, but if large-scale migration starts taking place, there will be security concerns. Firstly, not only because there will be a load of refugees, but amongst those who migrate, we will have to vet out. There will be all the elements. We are talking of ISI. We are talking of other vested interests. So all of them would like to make inroads along with these migrants. So that's going to be a real concern for all the states that border Bangladesh.
Let me give Ambassador Trigunit the final word. What about the connectivity projects? In the last decade and a half, India has had numerous connectivity projects by rail, by air. The number of flights has increased tremendously between India and Bangladesh, even water-based connectivity. Do you see any sort of challenge to that, particularly from the Chinese? If a new dispensation were to be more open to China, even if China doesn't get to sort of triangulate one of the Bangladeshi ports into One Belt, One Road initiative and so on, do you still feel that will be a matter of concern for India?
Well, Zaka, one thing is there that Sheikh Hasina was also quite close to China. In fact, she was there after visiting India. She went to China. And the Chinese are also very much active in Bangladesh and have been there. And very often there are concerns of balancing it out. So she was doing the balancing act, but it is likely that if another government comes. But let me just tell you, and my Bangladeshi friends can talk about it more, that all these political party leaders that we are talking about, the names, most of these leaders are aging leaders. They are either sick or they are not in a position to take. The young leadership from these organizations and political parties are not still that popular to be able to take it on themselves. Only worry is that parties like Jamaat-e-Islami and all that, if they become far too active, then the radicalization would begin in this, and that can take any time.
All right.
And that is something we need to be worried about. And I think that
Okay.
the China factor we have to contend in whole of our neighborhood. And that is a standard procedure.
Okay, we'll have
work
to. I'm sorry, I'm completely out of time, but thank you very much to General Dua, Ambassador Triguniat, Mr. Khalidi, and of course Mr. Habib for joining us. We'll see. We'll keep a close eye on not just what happens to Sheikh Hasina, where she eventually ends up finding some kind of political refuge. Right now, she's in India, but hectic negotiations are on. I'm given to understand with a friendly Western country for her to be able to go there and live there for a considerable period of time. India also has to negotiate the tricky situation vis-a-vis what dispensation now comes to power in Dhaka, whether it's the main opposition BNP party, will it give rise to the Jamaat or other Islamist parties? How does India deal with that, and how does India ensure that its interests are protected in Bangladesh and in the wider region? That's a wrap. Thanks very much for tuning in, but news and updates continue right here on the other side.
माई भाई मैंने भी इस बार एसआईपी करके म्यूचुअल फंड में पैसे डाले तो मुझे ये जानना था कि केवाईसी का चक्कर क्या है।
म्यूचुअल फंड सही है .com या अपने म्यूचुअल फंड की वेबसाइट पे जाओ, पैन नंबर डालो और सिर्फ इतना देखो कि तुम्हारा केवाईसी स्टेटस रजिस्टर्ड है या वैलिडेटेड।
रजिस्टर्ड हो तो
आधार और पैन कार्ड के साथ अपना केवाईसी वैलिडेट करो, जरूरी है और ज्यादा वक्त भी नहीं लगता।
और वैलिडेटेड हो तो
सही है।
सही है माई भाई, अब तक इन्वेस्ट किया ना हो तो
केवाईसी कर लो और मैदान में उतरो।
सही है।
म्यूचुअल फंड निवेश बाजार जोखिमों के अधीन है। योजना से जुड़े सभी दस्तावेजों को ध्यान से पढ़ें।
What fast-paced developments today in the subcontinent. At least Sheikh Hasina got to set the terms of her departure from office. The military got her to sign on her own resignation, rustled up a plane and flew her out to Delhi. Sari and smile, we're told, all in place. She's landed just a few moments ago at Delhi's or Hindan airport just outside of Delhi. Her own father, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, wasn't half as lucky, even though he stood accused of almost the same sins. On August 15, the day India marks its independence, Bangladesh mourns its founder's assassination. The crime of unimaginable thanklessness sent ripples across the subcontinent in 75. And I'm talking about 1975. Today, 50 years later, almost to the date, Rahman's daughter has been ousted from power by the very same troika that did her father in. Viewers, what we can tell you, of course, is a little bit of the background. She resigned, Sheikh Hasina did, amid raging protests over a 30% job quota for families of just freedom fighters. Many people saw this as a deliberate move to provoke those who ended up on the Pakistani side of the fence in 1971-72, viewers. They said that we are equally patriotic, but we were working under compulsion. The Bangladesh High Court reinstated the quota in June after pleas from 1971 veterans. The Supreme Court then scaled back the quota to 5%. But this move failed to douse the ardor of the protesters and diffuse these fiery outbursts. 300 were killed in violent crackdown on protesters, followed by internet blackout. This happened over the last few days, and the protest led to the shutdown of transport networks and 3,500 factories. Protesters demanded the resignation of Sheikh Hasina. Army chief then met other political parties who were, of course, in the opposition, some of them, viewers, Islamic parties. The army chief then announced an interim government after meeting with other political outfits. Sheikh Hasina is in India, and sources say she is likely to head to London very soon. She may not be given more than transit in India. Indeed, like it did in 1975, the Bangladesh army will inevitably work behind the scenes to get the Jamaat-e-Islami, among other Islamist parties, and the Bangladesh Nationalist Party, the BNP, which is the principal opposition, to work out an agreement between themselves to stake claim to power. When, not if, this happens, New Delhi will have a lot to be worried about. The ousted Awami League Party chief and Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina was a temperamental Democrat, but at least she wasn't a flaming religious incendiary. Hasina did very well to keep Sharia law proponents and Islamist obscurantists in check. Towards this end, she deployed several stratagems and they mostly worked. Women were free, religious minorities almost always in danger had at least a sympathetic ear in the administration. But most of all, India, with a vast Hindu population, could breathe easier on its eastern border. Now forget it. Bangladesh is destined to return to a state of affairs last observed during the 2001-2006 rule of the coalition government of the Bangladesh Nationalist Party and the Jamaat-e-Islami. Incidentally, both these entities have been deemed by certain US courts as, quote, tier 3 terrorist organizations, unquote. The characterization was prompted by the then Bangladesh state's acquisition of a distinct Islamist halo. The permissive radical culture allowed Pakistan's deep state to also creep into the country and raise a legion of Islamist extremists dedicated to its own bag of dirty tricks. These Pakistan-nurtured Bangladeshi terror cells would go on to set down roots not just in Bangladesh, but as far afield as India's west coast.
Climate change is on our doorstep. It's time for a revolution to take root. And it starts with 1.4 billion Indians. It starts with one tree for humanity, one tree for Mother Earth, one tree for our future. Project One Tree, a News 18 network initiative.
Presented by moved from their hunting ground in Bangladesh, lone wolves, indoctrinated by the twisted outlook of their Bangladesh-based Pakistani handlers, would display their penchant for grisly bigotry. Remember, viewers, the German bakery bombing in Pune? That happened in 2010, but the seeds were sown when the Islamists were in power in Bangladesh. And they are waiting in the wings. They are denigrating secular activists, bloggers and religious minorities to delegitimize their views and create a space for their own views. Backing parties like Jamaat-e-Islami and Bangladesh Nationalist Party and their use of religious rhetoric to mobilize support. They are playing to Muslim conservative gallery by criticizing Hasina's support for women's rights and minority freedoms. They're also whipping up anti-India sentiments by fanning fears of Hindu nationalist expansionism under Modi's NDA. Now, while it might take a few years for the clock to go back to that dark time, one in the immediate cannot but feel for the hundreds of thousands of Hindus who live in Bangladesh. The Hasina years saw some terrible excesses against Hindus, but they were not nearly as frequent or diabolical as they were before she took office. And because she did a wonderful job, as I already told you, to crack down on these Islamist organizations. She cracked down on Jamaat-ul-Mujahideen Bangladesh, the JMB, and the Ansarul Bangla team, the ABT, banning them and arresting their leaders. The execution of war criminals from the leadership of Jamaat-e-Islami, a party accused of war crimes during Bangladesh Liberation War in 1971, which weakened the Islamist movement. Bangladesh has enacted strict counter-terrorism laws. Hasina government has strengthened its intelligence agencies to monitor and prevent Islamist activities. She's encouraged moderate Islamic scholars and organizations to promote a peaceful interpretation of Islam. All of this is in danger of coming undone in the days ahead. Viewers, let me tell you that as the new regime consolidates power, New Delhi has a tricky task at hand. It can't totally abandon its assets in Bangladesh, but it will have to considerably warm towards those it least favors. And New Delhi cannot afford to wait and watch, because its greatest rivals in these parts, Pakistan and China, have a head start. In fact, as ironically as this may sound, even the Americans under Biden have made greater inroads than New Delhi among the opposition that has opposed Hasina. India has vast experience in playing both sides, but it has been guilty of not pivoting fast enough. Let's see, viewers. Let's analyze the challenges ahead. We're joined by Lieutenant General Sheikh Hasina, defense expert, served in the military, defended India's interests. Maruf Raza, defense analyst, is here with us, needs no introduction. I worked with him for many years, unbroken years. Brahma Chileni, strategic affairs expert. Anand Ranganathan, columnist, all together tonight to break these events down. Let me first begin with you, General Hasina. How do you see the security situation now unravel as it is in Bangladesh? Who do you see is going to really take control in this vacuum, and how will all of this play out for India?
Thank you, Rahul. Thank you, first of all, for inviting me for this very, very important show. And let me say that your introduction has been absolutely spot on. Are you hearing me well enough?
I can, sir. Perfectly, yes.
Right. In your excellent review, I may just add one more thing before I really respond to your question. Perhaps we could also add the angle of ISIS. 2015, I visited Dhaka at the invitation of the Bangladesh Army. And one of the things I experienced at that time, that was the time when the ISIS was trying to make inroads into Bangladesh. And this was the time when Sheikh Hasina's resistance against these inroads was extremely strong. Although a number of intellectuals had been killed, I think about 38 to 40 intellectuals had been assassinated at that particular time. In her time, she managed to hold on. This is something which...
Hello, Namaskar. This is First Post and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. Today was Monday Pro Max. There's just way too much happening in our world. The Prime Minister of Bangladesh has been ousted from power and she has fled the country. The pictures are very dramatic and the consequences, I'm afraid, will be even more so. We'll talk about how this happened and what it means for Sheikh Hasina, for Bangladesh and for India. In West Asia, Israel is waiting for an attack from Iran that will most